Part 19. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 181. Luo Cheng shook his head. I don't know. I just discovered it today. The thread has grown to 3 fingers wide on the wrist. Gu Huizi frowned and said immediately, if things change, go to Ziliang Kingdom as soon as possible. I'll make arrangements now. Luo Cheng left quickly. Gu Huizi returned to the inner room. All the things Suwan was going to bring to the regent's palace had been packed and packed. There's nothing missing, right? Gu Huizi glanced thoughtfully, his eyes falling on the medical books on the box, and he took them over casually. Your medical skills have reached the pinnacle. Aren't these medical books too simple for you? No, this medical book talks about witch doctors. It's quite interesting. Suwan approached Gu Huizi and opened the cover with her delicate white fingers. There were ancient and complicated words inside, with pictures beside them. When combined, it was quite interesting. Barely able to understand, I read very slowly. I read it for several days before I read a few pages. Where did you get it? Gu Huizi didn't remember that Suwan had medical books in the Gu family. After arriving in the capital, she didn't have time to go shopping. There is one on the bookshelf in the house we live in. I saw it. I just wanted to study it and kill some time. Suwan looked into his dark eyes, confusion flashed across her dark eyes. Is there any problem? It's okay. Gu Huizi closed the book and put it back to its original place. Do you know anything about witch doctors? I think it's quite easy to understand, but there are some strange powers and confusions. It is said that witch doctors can communicate with ghosts and gods and are better at medicine than wizards. I have only just scratched the surface of the spells and incantations above. If I can understand this aspect, with some guidance, I should be able to learn faster. Suwan said nonchalantly, it's useless anyway, just study it slowly. There was one thing that Suwan didn't talk about. There was also an explanation on how to make poisonous poison. Seeing the insidious effect of the poison, her scalp was about to explode. On the one hand, I doubted the authenticity of this poisonous poison, but on the other hand, I felt that it would be too sinister. She didn't do any research, and was currently more interested in witch doctors. Shall we go to the palace earlier? My father is not in good health. I will make him nourishing meals. If there are no ingredients in the kitchen, there is still time to buy them. Suwan smiled brightly, hugged Gu Huizi's arm, and tilted her head. Ask him, what kind of food does your father like to eat? Gu Huizi had mixed feelings in his heart. When he heard her nagging about the regent's preferences when he was about to say the words, he couldn't bear to pour cold water on her and affect her mood. Luo Cheng said that his father-in-law was poisoned more than 10 years ago. This time, because of his poisoning, the poison caused an attack and he was not in good health. Wan, if you don't know how to cure it, we need to go to the White Horse Temple in Ziliang Kingdom as soon as possible. The eminent monk will take care of it. Gu Huizi looked solemn, worried that Suwan would collapse. Suwan felt as if a piece of ice had been stuffed into her heart, freezing all the blood in her body. All the joy was in vain. She just felt that God loved to play tricks on people. One moment she was told that her mother was still alive, and the next moment someone told her that her mother had married someone else and had a son and a daughter, living a happy life. She is just a superfluous person. Mother doesn't want to see her at all, right? Although Suwan felt disappointed, she was still a little sad. She felt that she had never had the fate of her parents either in her previous life or in this life. When she no longer had extravagant hopes, the little puppet revealed her life experience. Her biological father was someone else, and he cared about her very much. Suwan was very, very happy. Her father liked her and she would have a father in the future. But less than an hour later, bad news came again. My father was poisoned by a sinister poison. Tears welled up in Suwan's eyes, and she wiped the tears with her hands randomly. She didn't want to cry. The most useless thing in the world is tears, which only reveal the fragility of human nature and have no other use. She has rarely cried since she was sensible. But the tears were not obedient at all and could not be wiped away. Don't cry. Gu Huizi hugged Suwon and gently wiped her tears with a handkerchief. It will be okay, there is still hope. Suwon hugged Gu Huizi with both hands and shook her head in his arms. She remembered that when she was in the first grade of elementary school, she came home from school and heard the sound of children crying and being beaten and scolded from the neighbor's house next door. Cry, 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 are you crying? Suwon, the star of the family, loved to cry when he was a child. She made her parents cry to death. If you want to cry your parents to death, just cry hard. Grandpa happened to be coming out of home. When he heard this, he was so angry that he lost his mind and came to argue with others. The woman was a sharp-tongued woman, and her sharp words pierced Suwon's eardrums. What did I say? Suwon is a evil star with a hard life and killed her parents. That couple turned out to be she had to come back a few days late, but she cried so hard that she came back early and was buried alive by a mudslide on the road. Suwon didn't go home. There was a century-old locust tree in the backyard. The trunk of the locust tree was hollow and there was a big hole. She hid in the hole. When she woke up again, she was lying on the bed. Her grandfather and grandpa's eyes were red and their hair seemed to be completely white. A loving smile appeared on their faces. Wan, are you awake? Are you hungry? Grandpa cooked your favorite minced meat porridge, and Grandpa made your favorite sugar buns. If you don't want to eat these two, we will start over again. Do other things. Grandpa, Mom, and Dad. Wan, don't listen to that talkative woman's nonsense. It's not your fault. It's Grandpa. Grandpa has a birthday, so they came early. Look, you used to always call your parents. How often did you not want to cry? It's Grandpa's fault that they didn't come back once because you wanted them. And Grandpa, it was Grandpa who called them to tell them that my knee was broken and the pain was severe, so they came back early to take a look. Suwon was still young at that time and was coaxed by her grandfather. Only when she grew up did she realize that what her neighbors said was true. She had chicken pox, herpes on her mouth, and high fever. She was only 2 years old at the time and was crying in discomfort. Grandpa was answering his mother's call. When he heard her crying and learned about her condition, his mother's work just came to an end and he rushed back early to see her. Who knew he would encounter a mudslide? Grandpa and Grandpa's words were just to tell her not to blame herself. Suwon kept this matter in mind. Until now, she had to think that maybe life was too tough. She had just traveled through time in this life, and Sujihong was still her nominal father, so his right hand was chopped off. Chi Min was far away from her and was happy. Ji Xian had just recognized her and was in pain. He had been fine for the past 10 years. Suwon couldn't help but get into trouble. It's because of my bad luck. He met me and suffered a lot. My father-in-law should not have died, so he met you and got to know your father and daughter. Gu Huizi lowered his head and kissed her forehead, comforting Suwon. Don't worry, go and have a look, maybe it can be cured. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 182. Suwon felt very sad and had not yet solved herself. I was worried about the regent's condition and couldn't wait to go and have a look. He was also afraid that her approach would bring disaster to the regent. When she hesitated, Gu Huizi had already taken her out. Qi Lu had a look and asked people to move the boxes and cages onto the carriage. When Suwon saw a box being brought in, her expression suddenly changed. You. Wan, don't think too much. Gu Huizi couldn't see her panic, pale face, and absent-mindedness, so he took her into his arms and coaxed her. You don't know how good you are. If you weren't you, I am still suffering from illness. If it were not for you, my mother and brothers and sisters would not be able to live a good life so quickly. If it were not for you, Chi Jiajin would still be hiding in Tibet. If it were not for you, what would happen to Zwixianglu and Zinglan Medical Center? Would the current situation be like this? The special medicine you developed has saved the soldiers and civilians from suffering. No one can cure the poison on my father-in-law. If it weren't for you, how could he still have a chance of survival? Death penalty. You are a little lucky star, you bring us good luck. Gu Huizi saw that her mood slowly calmed down, and her dark and bright eyes in the past were now covered with a layer of confusion, as if she didn't know that she had done so many things. He felt pity in his heart, his eyes were soft, and he rubbed her head with his hands. My father-in-law's condition is just very dangerous. Poisonous poison is not a terminal illness and cannot be cured. Suwon was still panicking and tried her best to stay calm. You're right, I am definitely not. The disaster star. The last two words were rumbling in Suwon's throat, but she couldn't squeeze them out. She went to look for the medical book in the cage, and when she got it in her hand, she realized that her hands were shaking badly. People who are poisoned by poison will suffer from bone-crushing pain that is very unbearable. Tortured until death. Suwon finally understood why such medical books still appeared in the house given to her by the regent. It must be because he had searched for information before and thought about saving himself. Just thinking about it, a sense of sourness surged up in my heart, my nose and eyes turned red. She flipped through the pages, and when she arrived at the regent's palace, she felt a little more confident. Suwon jumped out of the carriage first and ran quickly to the main courtyard without knocking on the door, just barging in. The prince regent seemed to be exhausted. He was sitting on a broad couch with a big pillow on his back, reviewing official documents. The moment he heard the movement, he looked sideways. When he saw Suwon, the coldness in the corners of his eyes and brows melted away, and a little warmth floated in his eyes. Zhao. As soon as he opened his mouth, Suwon had already rushed over, grabbed his wrist, and saw the red line, like a life-giving thread, growing faintly upward. Suwon's face turned pale and she quickly checked him. The way to check the poisonous poison is to check the pulse, which cannot be detected. Suwon asked the regent to unbutton her clothes and expose her arms and chest. She saw at a glance that the skin was black and swollen an inch above her chest. She took out a silver needle and inserted it. The silver needle turned black. This was indeed a sign of poison. Putting down the silver needle, Suwon followed the steps in the book, checked it carefully, and asked a few more questions. When she got the result, her expression changed drastically. Father, what you have is a mother-child voodoo. What's in your body is a child goo. The mother goo is parasitic on another person. Your poisonous voodoo is not caused by your poison, but because the host of the mother goo is bad. The regent didn't take it seriously. He had known earlier that it was the mother-child goo, and the mother goo must be in the Great Witch. Luo Cheng on the side didn't know what he was thinking of, and his expression suddenly changed. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 183. Chi Minzong was ambushed and captured, which caused a particularly sensational incident. And because the regent went to the enemy to rescue people single-handedly, this matter was pushed to the highest point, and no one knew about it. The regent brought Chi Min back. She fell into a coma. The military doctor diagnosed and treated Chi Mi and she only had whip wounds and a low fever. The military doctor prescribed medicine. The regent fed Chi Min to drink and stayed overnight. On the second day, something happened in the army. Luo Cheng came over personally to call the regent. The regent fell down just after he stepped out of the camp. The military doctor looked at it for a long time and found no problem, but the regent had been in a coma, and the situation was obviously not optimistic to the naked eye. Everyone in the army was anxious. Luo Cheng asked around for doctors. They were a border town and doctors were in short supply. Later, he accidentally inquired about the news in the city that the enemy army was keeping a great witch. Luo Cheng hurried back to the military camp and heard that Chi Min had woken up and left the military camp. Luo Cheng thought that Chi Min was seeking medical advice for the regent, and thought that this man was also quite righteous. Chi Min didn't come back until more than 2 months after leaving. The prince regent was in a coma for more than 2 months. Luo Cheng was somewhat resentful of Chi Min, thinking that she was not seeking medical treatment for his master at all, but that she did not want to take responsibility, so she fled back to the capital to become eldest lady. When he suddenly saw Chi Min again, Luo Cheng was shocked. She had lost a lot of weight, her hair was disheveled, her face was pale and haggard, and her eyes were dark and bright, and she was particularly lively. Luo Cheng ignored her. Chi Min glanced at him coldly and returned to her tent. Luo Cheng only felt that the regent had saved a heartless white-eyed wolf. He had no time to waste. Following the news, he met the wandering monk who suppressed the poisonous poison for the regent. Luo Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't see Chi Min coming to visit the regent for 2 days in a row. Later, he said it was because he was tired. He slept for 2 days and 2 nights, and the sound of the drill horn failed to wake her up. Now that all the things are connected in series, Luo Cheng has to think more. Chi Min is now the queen of Ziliang Kingdom, and that eminent monk was from Bama Temple in Ziliang. She had disappeared for more than 2 months at that time. She was covered in dust and had lost a lot of weight. Counting it up now, the border town is far away from the Ziliang Kingdom. It takes more than 2 months to reach the border town without stopping. At that time, she went to Ziliang Kingdom to find an eminent monk. And why not bring the eminent monk to you personally? Is it to cover up the fact that she also has poisonous poison on her body? Apart from this, Luo Cheng could not think of anything else. If the mother voodoo is on Chi Min, then according to Su Wan's words, Chi Min will die. Gu Huizi noticed Luo Cheng's abnormality. Do you know the inside story? Luo Cheng shook his head, not sure. Su Wan said, tell me about it. Luo Cheng glanced at the regent who was coughing muffledly and hesitated, but he also knew that this matter could not be hidden. If Chi Minruo dies, the regent will not survive. He gritted his teeth and said, I suspect the mother Gu is in the Queen of 11 Liang. Luo Cheng told everything about what happened at the beginning. The regent was surprisingly quiet, and I didn't know what he was thinking. Su Wan lowered her eyes and was surprised that the mother's poison was on Chi Mi and she was in poor health. Is this because she was anxious to be canonized as the crown princess? If this is the case, it also shows that they want to form an alliance. Gu Huizi asked, Luo Cheng, have the arrangements been made? Young master, my subordinates have made arrangements and will be able to go to Ziliang Kingdom in 5 days. No, the envoy will be sent out in 3 days. The regent made the final decision. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 184. The regent was very calm, and his dark eyes covered all his thoughts, making it impossible to see what he was thinking. Zhao, the yard where you live has been cleaned up. Father has selected some ornaments. See if you like them. If you don't like them, just go to the warehouse to choose, the regent said in a very gentle tone. The embroiderer will come to give them to you later. Measure the size and choose the fabric and color. If you don't like it, there are several boxes of cloth in your room and you can make clothes for the embroiderer. The cooks in the palace are very skilled and can cook the 8 major cuisines, and some are good at desserts. Just tell the maid what kind of food you want to eat, and the kitchen will be on standby at any time. The jewelry from Genbeolu is the first in the capital. It is more than a star and a half behind the palace craftsman. 3 days is too short. You choose the pattern first and have it finished when you get back from Ziliang. For the time being, just pick it up from Genbeolu. Choose a few items for daily wear, they are available in other warehouses. The regent took the trouble to give Suwon detailed instructions, and finally gave Suwon the key to the palace's warehouse and the jade plaque representing his identity pass. Suwon was shocked. No one had ever made such detailed arrangements for her. Back in her yard, the front yard was filled with peonies, and a new swing was built between 2 peach trees. Stepping on the clean bluestone, she pushed open the door of the main room, and a sweet and elegant fragrance hit her nostrils. She glanced at the incense burner placed on the high table. The incense pills smelled very good. The house is elegantly decorated, exuding a low-key luxury, and every detail is exquisite. Especially the ornaments on the Duobeo pavilion, each one was exquisite and precious, and it was a dazzling display that dazzled her eyes. There was a large woven blanket spread on the floor tiles, and 7 or 8 large boxes were placed in the middle. The maid stood behind Suwon. Seeing that she was staring at the carpet without getting in, as if she was afraid of getting it dirty, she explained, "Miss, the master has prepared 5 or 6 woven carpets, which will be replaced every day. It is very thick and will not be worn when you step on it. The top is very soft and won't hurt your feet. You won't get cold if you don't like to wear shoes." Suwon curled her lips, took off her shoes and stepped on the carpet. It was really soft, as if she were stepping on cotton. "The box is full of cloth." The maid's voice was filled with laughter. "These cloths are the trophies of the master's victory in the war. There is no mistress in the house. They have been stored in the warehouse and are well maintained. It is very meaningful for you to cut and wear them. It's different." Suwon's heart moved, and she opened the box. The light and shadow of the cloth inside were flowing, smooth, soft, and extremely thin. The colors are elegant and beautiful, and the clothes will definitely look fairy-like. "Miss, which ones do you like?" The maid opened all the boxes. Suwon took one look at them and said, "I like them all. Master said that if everyone likes it, he will cut them into clothes and wear new ones every day." Seeing Suwon's surprised expression, the maid said good things for the regent, hoping that the father and daughter would get closer. "Master said that the little girl likes to wear new clothes. You will be happy every time you wear new clothes. You will be happy every day if you wear new clothes every day." Suwon felt sad in her heart. "No, just make a few clothes. Put all the other cloths in the warehouse. I will wear them slowly." "Okay." The maid held a few pieces of cloth that Suwon picked and ordered the rest to be sent to the warehouse. Suwon sat on the floor and looked at the decoration in the room that suited her preferences. The table was filled with all kinds of candied fruits. She secretly made up her mind that no matter what the price, she must cure Ji Xian. "Miss Xiu Niang and the people from Genbeo Tower are here. Go to the front room." Suwon got up and followed the maid to the front hall. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 185. Suwon was unwilling to disclose her identity for the time being. Faced with the scrutiny of Xiu Niang and the shopkeeper of Genbeo building, the maid explained that Suwon was treating the Prince Regent and was a distinguished guest of the Prince Regent's palace. The sound of this distinguished guest made Xiu Niang and the shopkeeper of Genbeo Tower dare not neglect them. However, word spread that Suwon was staying at the regent's mansion and treating the regent's illness. Emperor Jing was meditating in the Taoist temple built in the palace, with the prince accompanying him. "Prince, the regent is sick." Emperor Jing opened his eyes, looked at the curling cigarette, and squinted in discomfort. "His body has always been strong, Why did he suddenly become ill? The prince's eyes fell on Emperor Jing's face. His handsome and elegant face when he was young had taken too many pills and turned black, and his eyes were extremely cloudy. After his wise father became obsessed with the pursuit of immortality, he abandoned the Zhou dynasty and fell into the hands of others. The prince lowered his eyes and said calmly, "The old disease caused by the emperor's uncle's expedition to the south and north broke out." I see. Emperor Jing nodded, not too concerned. "Why did you come to see me?" "Father, 11 Liang Kingdom invited Dazhu to attend the ceremony of canonizing the crown princess. The other two countries sent their princes," the prince said meaningfully. "The emperor is preparing to go in person. No one is in charge. Father, you must personally preside over the government." Emperor Jing frowned. The regent's work is very reassuring. He went to Ziliang Kingdom in person for his own purposes. He will arrange the affairs of the court properly. After a pause, Emperor Jing complied with the prince's wishes. "You assist the regent's people preside over the government." The prince wanted to take charge of the government alone and was dissatisfied with Emperor Jing's arrangements. It might be better to let him participate than to have the regent cover the sky with one hand. "I accept your orders." The prince stood up, bowed, and exited. The sky is blue and the sun is bright. The prince stood at the door, looking at the cloudless sky. His eyes fell on the regent's palace, and there was a layer of gloom in his eyes. He straightened his sleeves and robe and headed towards the East Palace. "Your Highness, Miss Su is staying at the Prince Regent's mansion to treat the prince's illness." Ji Lin followed the prince and reported the news. The prince's eyes were dark, and he couldn't help but think, if he had not given up on Su Wan, how would she treat the regent now that she was his princess? Once the regent was dead, no one could restrain him. "Go to the national temple." The prince turned around and prepared to see the Empress Dowager. There is a courtyard at the foot of the back mountain in the Kuasi temple. The door plaque is engraved with the two words Goizhen. An old woman with grey hair, dressed in soap-colored palace clothes, elegant and luxurious, with sharp lines at the corners of her eyes. She stood in the courtyard, holding a string of Buddhist beads in her hand, looking in the direction of the palace, with a gloomy look on her face. "Queen Mother, it's time for you to have dinner." Nanian stood respectfully behind the Queen Mother and called out in a low voice. The Queen Mother plucked the beads in her hand, withdrew her gaze, and turned to look at Anton. "How is Ji Xian?" "The prince is ill, and Su Wan is staying in the palace to treat him." Anton was afraid that the Queen Mother would not understand, so she explained carefully, "Su Wan is the apprentice of Master Weiren. He understands medicine and is said to be a miracle doctor." "Grandstanding. What kind of person is Su Wan?" the Queen Mother said in a disdainful tone. "The good-for-nothing young lady is not as good as the Qi family." Grandma An didn't dare to answer. As a woman, Ji Xian turned against the Ai family and was imprisoned in this poor temple, disrupting the imperial court. What is the state of Zhou like today? He is unfilial as a son, unjust as a brother, and unfaithful as a minister. It is a misfortune for the Ai family to give birth to such an unfaithful, unjust, and unfilial person. The Queen Mother's eyes were cold and cold. "Did you light the incense you sent to Qinzhen Hall last time?" Nani An's heart tightened. "Let's order." After a while, the prince will go to the Qinzhen Hall to handle official duties. Not long after, he became ill. The corners of the Queen Mother's lips raised, and it was done. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 186. The Queen Mother was in a good mood and ate one more bowl of rice than usual. Nanian sighed in her heart. The Queen Mother only had 2 sons, but the one she liked the most was Emperor Jing, who looked very gentle and elegant. Emperor Jing seemed to have no temper in front of the Queen Mother, and she had to ask the Queen Mother to make the final decision on every little thing. Even if he marries a wife later, he will have to ask the Queen Mother for all matters in the palace. The Queen Mother had a strong desire to control. What Emperor Jing did greatly pleased the Queen Mother, giving her a great sense of accomplishment and a feeling of being deeply needed and relied upon. The Prince Regent was different. He was taciturn and didn't like to cause trouble to others. He did all the big and small things himself and never bothered the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother wanted to intervene and be his master, but all attempts were rejected by the regent. Or just stand there expressionless, listening to the Queen Mother's reprimands, not being able to argue, but not taking it seriously, and just going my own way. The Queen Mother was disgusted by the regent's disobedience. She didn't like this feeling of losing control. A heart is biased toward Emperor Jing. The bigger reason is that Emperor Jing's accession to the throne means that the Queen Mother has more say in the government affairs. Therefore, the Queen Mother often said in the ear of the late emperor, "Your Majesty, after a war in the history of the great Zhou dynasty, it is now in a period of peace and prosperity. Han and rivers are clear. There is no need for a hegemon to dominate the world. Instead, we need a benevolent king who cares about the people and develops scholars, farmers, industry, and commerce. Linger will lead Dazhu to another peak, and he will be a wise king in the future, even if his abilities are limited. Xian'er is cold-blooded and has a deep mind. Such a character has always become a tyrant in history, and eventually leads to the destruction of the country. He is like a god in using soldiers, brave and good at fighting. He is a sharp weapon for the country. If he is placed at the border to guard it, he can intimidate the other three countries. Dare not attack Dazhu. Linger and Xian'er are brothers. They complement each other and will definitely be able to govern the great Zhou dynasty. The late emperor's favorite was Ji Xian, who was talented in literature, military skills, brave and resourceful. Ji Ling has no independent opinion, and lacks a bloody spirit and a woman's benevolence. Compared with Ji Xian, he is hard to catch up with. I am interested in Xian'er. With him commanding the great Zhou dynasty, he may be able to fulfill the ancestors' great wish, and make the world a vassal, and all nations will come to court. Your Majesty, my concubine asked Xian'er that he is not willing to inherit the throne and wants to assist his brother. Please don't embarrass Xian'er and make the two brothers feud. The late emperor feigned anger and said, "Are you accusing me of alienating brothers? I don't dare." The Queen Mother did not know what she whispered to the late emperor, and there was a burst of harmonious laughter. When Nanian recalled this memory, she felt that the Queen Mother was extremely partial. Not only did he use Qi Min to make the regent voluntarily give up the throne, but he also turned against him and did not allow the regent to marry Qi Mi, and the end we have ended up is really our own fault. Not only did she not reflect on it, but she also had the intention to eradicate it. Royal family ties are indeed vulnerable in the face of power. Naturally, Anton did not dare to make unreasonable opinions, but only dared to express her opinions in her heart. She calmed down her thoughts and handed the Queen Mother tea to rinse her mouth. "Do you want to go for a walk to eat?" "Let's go." The Queen Mother resented Ji Xian's viciousness and imprisoned her in the national temple. She also told Ji Ling to indulge in the way of immortality and ignore government affairs. Now that Ji Xian is poisoned, it is obviously impossible for Ji Ling to rule the country again after his death. She needs to select a prince from among the royal heirs to cultivate at this time. As for who this person is, the Queen Mother has not yet decided. The Queen Mother walked out of the house and saw Ji Wuifeng, dressed in regular clothes, walking with Ji Lin. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 187. Royal Grandmother. The prince saluted the Queen Mother respectfully and asked, "Are you feeling well?" The corners of the Queen Mother's mouth twitched slightly, she raised her chin slightly, and said with unclear meaning, "Prince, do you think the AI family is living well or not well in this place of pure cultivation?" The prince's heart was awe-inspiring, and he said more and more cautiously, Royal Grandmother, you prayed for the Great Joe in the National Temple. Over the years, the Great Joe has had good weather, the country is peaceful and the people are safe, and you have contributed a lot to it. My grandson wants to take you back to the palace, but it's a pity that you are alone. We are weak, and now the Emperor's uncle is going to Ziliang as an envoy to attend the ceremony of canonizing the crown princess. My father ordered his son to assist the Emperor's people to take charge of the government. Today I am here to tell you that my grandson will welcome you in 5 days. Return to the palace. The Queen Mother's eyes moved, and she finally looked directly at the prince. She looked at him from top to bottom several times, and then she realized that the prince had grown from an immature boy to a young man. His eyes were full of ambition, and he was more eager for power than Ji Ling. Before the prince came to the temple, the Queen Mother had not considered forming an alliance with the prince. Because he grew up under the Queen's knees, and secretly interacted with Ji Xian to compete with the Queen Mother, and finally followed Ji Xian's arrangement to marry Su Mingxiu and gave up marrying Su Wan. The Queen Mother thought that the prince had become Ji Xian's puppet. Now after hearing what he said, well, that's not the case. He was taking advantage of his own strength, enduring the humiliation and bearing the burden, and when he found the opportunity, he would fight back against Ji Xian. Come into the room and talk. The Queen Mother held Nanny An's hand and entered the room. She didn't want to stay in the National Temple for a moment. The prince wanted to take her back to the palace. He took advantage of Ji Xian's mission to Ziliang and asked her to return to the palace to take charge of the overall situation. The prince's current ability is too weak, and he may be too passive when facing Ji Xian, so she needs to step forward. After all, she is Ji Xian's mother, the Queen Mother of a country. The opportunity she had been waiting for years came. The two men have formed an alliance at this moment. The Queen Mother sat down. The prince stood in front of the Queen Mother and said, "Royal Grandmother, the Emperor's uncle is seriously ill. Dr. Lu has been treating him, but there is no improvement. I have placed an informant in Liu's house, and the news came that the poison he was poisoned is related to his adopted son. The same thing. There is no cure for Ting Yuan's poison, and it seems the same is true for the Emperor's uncle. If he has any heirs, his men will be leaderless." When the Queen Mother heard the name Ting Yuan, her eyes flickered slightly. "How is his adopted son? I have disappeared for almost a year, and there is no news. I am afraid that I will soon fall ill and die." The prince muttered, "My father has made no achievements in the court, and my uncle has messed up the court, but most of the courtiers regard him as a follower. I plan to ask him to come forward." Mr. Ji Lao Jiang comes out. He was a minister of the Imperial Academy in those days, and was once the first assistant. He had disciples all over the Zhou dynasty. Almost half of the people in the court had to call him sir. He strongly disagreed with the emperor's uncle's approach. For this reason, he resigned as the first assistant and retired to his hometown. It shows that he is a man of true temperament. If we can win over him, we can quickly regain the lost imperial power. The Queen Mother saw some hesitation in the prince's eyebrows and couldn't help but ask, "What are your concerns?" The prince thought that Gu Huizi was Master Jiang's student, and he felt a little unhappy when he thought of Gu Huizi marrying Su Wan. No, the prince shook his head. The Queen Mother also knew that Mr. Jiang was very stubborn and had trouble dealing with Ji Xian. Although he was no longer in the court, he still had great influence. "The Ijia will wait for you in 5 days to welcome the Ijia back to the palace. At that time, the Ijia will personally invite Mr. Jiang to come out." Thinking of returning to the palace soon, the Queen Mother's heavy twilight energy dissipated and her whole face became radiant. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 188. The prince left the national temple, took a carriage and took a special detour to the regent's palace to find out what was going on. When the servant saw it was the prince, he went to inform him before leading him in. The prince wiped away the gloom in his eyes. Once the prince met a prince, he was locked out and needed to be informed. I'm afraid only Das who is like this. The prince took a familiar route to the main courtyard. Suddenly, his footsteps stopped. Suwon came out of the courtyard next to the main courtyard. She was wearing a silver-red dress, which looked like flowers drawn from peach blossom branches. It was delicate and bright, and the skirt was fluttering in the breeze. It was so beautiful. The prince's eyes were hot, and the person in front of him was more lively and alluring than before. His Adam's apple slid slightly and he walked towards Suwon. Wan, long time no see, how are you? We should be strangers. Don't be an eyesore in front of me. I will live a better life. Suwon felt disgusted when she saw the prince and walked past him. Wan, don't do this. The prince grabbed Suwon's wrist, his palm stung, and he pulled his hand back suddenly. There was a little blood mark on his palm. He looked with a sullen face and saw a flash of silver light on Suwon's fingertips, her hands in her sleeves. Wan, do you really want to be so heartless? The prince smiled bitterly. What is my situation? You know in your heart that if I choose you, both of us will be in danger. I have no choice but to temporarily abandon you. One day I will let you come to me again. A memory came to Suwon's mind. There are many cornices in the palace, and there are many layers. You can't see the end at a glance. There is only a clear blue sky in front of you, and a few chaffinches fly over and land in the flower bed. Suwon lay on the railing and looked around lazily. The prince stood on the long white marble bridge and stretched out a hand towards her. Wan, come here. A bright smile broke out on Suwon's childish face, her eyes filled with tiny rays of light. She picked up the hem of her skirt and ran to the prince in joy. She shyly handed her hand over, placing her white and tender fingertips on his. The prince chuckled and held her hand. Suwon curled her fingers, her brows showing the shyness and reserve of a girl, and looked down the bridge with red cheeks. The prince gently stroked her long, silky hair and whispered in her ear, Wan, you will be my wife soon, so you must adapt as soon as possible. Suwon's head hung lower, her ears turned red, and she moved her fingertips to free herself. Wan, no matter what happens, you must stay by my side, don't abandon me, and fight side by side with me. The prince held her hand a little tighter. I am not a member of the palace. Without the help of my family, I will have to fight alone for a long time in the future. I only have you. Suwon didn't care about being shy and raised her head, her dark and bright eyes full of determination. Brother Feng, no matter you are inferior to one person, superior to 10,000 people, or a white body eating chaffy vegetables, I will never leave you behind. You. Not long after the two exchanged their feelings, the prince decided to abandon Suwon and marry another woman. The moment he gave up on her, there wasn't even an explanation, leaving her in the dark. Pulling away from the memory, a sneer flashed across Suwon's lips. The royal family's feelings were indeed thinner than paper. You dare to act bravely and don't come in front of me and say some disgusting words. I still respect you as a man. Now it seems that it is nothing more than that. Thank you for not marrying me and letting me find a better man. Suwon's eyes he flashed a cold light and warned, don't provoke me again, otherwise it will be more than just this lesson. The prince was stunned for a moment, not understanding the meaning of Suwon's words. When he saw Suwon walking past him and leaving, he subconsciously reached for someone, only to find that his entire right arm was paralyzed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Nongmen Bao. Chapter 189. The prince watched Suwon leave, and then looked at his right hand that could not move, with a sinister look in his eyes. He thought of the sting in his palm just now, that needle was poisonous. The prince calmed down, went to the main courtyard and knocked on the door. There was no movement inside. The prince looked at Luo Cheng, who was standing aside. Luo Cheng's eyes observe his nose, and his nose observes his heart. The scene where the prince was pestering Suwan just now had been seen by the master from the window. "Uncle Emperor, I have come to discuss something with you." The prince's tone was calm and respectful. There was still no movement in the house. The prince's face gradually stiffened. "Your Highness, I'm going to make tea for you right now." Luo Cheng immediately fled. The prince's face was covered by dark clouds, so naturally he did not dare to get angry in the regent's palace. It would be even more inappropriate to walk away at this time. It was getting dark, and the lights were on inside the house. Not knowing where he came from, Luo Cheng raised his head and knocked on the door. "Master, the prince is here." The low and hoarse voice of the prince regent came, "Come in." The prince stood for half an hour before pushing the door open and entering. The regent was sitting on the soft couch with his outer robe wrapped around him, as if he had just woken up from sleep. His eyebrows were gloomy. "Uncle Emperor, I am here on an envoy to Ziliang." "You are not feeling well, why don't you go to Ziliang?" the prince asked tentatively. "No need." The regent moved his hand and pinched his eyebrows. "I have other things for you to do." The prince's eyes moved. "I have been here for about half a year before returning to the Zhou dynasty. Your father is obsessed with the art of immortality and ignores government affairs. Someone must be able to control the situation." The regent picked up a cup of tea to moisten his throat and said calmly, "You haven't been alone in these years. Let me see what you are capable of." "Uncle, please give me your instructions." The prince did not think that the regent gave him an easy job. "Sure enough," the regent said, "except for Marquis Dingyuan, within 3 days, I will have evidence of his crime on this book." The prince's expression suddenly changed. The regent's eyes were cold and sharp. "No. Don't worry, uncle, I will definitely take care of it." The prince walked out of the house, the cold wind blew, and his mind became clearer. "I was thinking about the regent's intention. Did he know about his secret dealings with Sujihong and let him attack Sujihong, causing Sujihong to jump over the wall and bite him out? If he didn't deal with Sujihong, the regent would definitely find a way to suppress him from participating in the government." The prince straightened his sleeves, a cold light appeared in his brows, and walked away from the regent's palace. Luo Cheng looked at the prince's back disappearing into the night and entered the house. The regent said coldly, "I will reveal the news to Sujihong in the future, and the prince will kill the donkey." Luo Cheng's eyebrows skipped a beat. Was this really a dog-eat-dog drama? What if the prince borrows a knife to kill someone? The eyeliner placed on the prince's place can be used. Luo Cheng felt awestruck in his heart. It didn't matter if the prince's men touched Sujihong, no matter whose sword the prince borrowed. "I'll make arrangements now." Luo Cheng stepped back. When Mrsu heard that Suwan was going to Ziliang with the regent, she immediately asked her nanny to send a message to Suwan, asking Suwan to come and take her to the nunnery tomorrow, and explain some words by the way. Grandma left the house with Mrsu's words. Someone soon told Kinglan the news. Kinglan found out that Mrsu had given all the valuable things in her hand to Suwan, and was worried that she would not find a chance to get the things back. Upon hearing the news, a vicious light flashed in her eyes. She went to the study to find Sujihong. "Master, I am going to go to the national temple to offer incense tomorrow. Please assign some skilled people to me." Sujihong held the letter from the prince in his hand, his eyes bright and uncertain. "Okay, I'll prepare a few more people for you." Sujihong burned the letter in the candlelight. "I'll go with you. The author has something to say. Good night, babies, see you tomorrow, okay." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 190. When Suwan received the news from Mrsu, she closed the book and fell asleep while holding a medical book and studying poisonous poison. Early the next day, she put the dowry given by Mrsu into a small bag, slung it on her shoulder and took a carriage to the Su mansion. 2 carriages stopped at the door of Su mansion. Mrs. Su, Sujihong, and Kinglan came out one after another. The mother-son relationship between Sujihong and Mrs. Su is like fire and water. Out of filial piety, Sujihong saluted calmly, "Mother." Mrs. Su glanced at him coldly and did not respond. When she saw Suwon getting off the carriage, a smile suddenly appeared on her face. "Wan, you're here." Grandma Suwon came over and held Mrs. Su's arm. "Have you packed all your things?" "Pack it all up." Mrs. Su looked at Suwon's pointed chin and her eyelids covered with green shadows, and said distressedly, "I've lost weight." Busy to open the medical clinic, Suwon avoided the important and took the easy way out. "I'll help you get on the carriage." "Oh, now you have the regent as your backer, and your father doesn't recognize you. You don't know how to bow when you meet your elders. But that's right, you are a little bitch who has been born without a mother since you were a child. I don't expect you to be well educated." Kinglan sarcastically said to Sujihong with a look of joy, "Master, it's a good thing that you posted a notice to sever the relationship between father and daughter, otherwise it would be a disgrace to the Su family." Suwon walked towards Kinglan. The guards of the home mansion stepped forward to stop him. The chief family army brought by Suwon restrained the people. Before Kinglan could react, Suwon grabbed her by the lapel of her clothes, raised her hand and slapped her in the face, and said unscrupulously, "You are right, I have not been taught by my mother since I was a child, and I don't know the rules. Do it. Please forgive me for the extraordinary things, Madame Ding Yuan Ho." Kinglan screamed and covered her cheek, shaking with anger. She opened her mouth to curse, but when she met Suwon's sharp eyes, she was so frightened that she fell silent. "If you don't want your life, you can come and provoke me. Anyway, I'm not afraid of death." Suwon bared his teeth at her, showed a malicious smile, and pushed hard. Kinglan screamed "Ah!" and fell to the ground. Suwon swept Tang's leg, and with a dong sound, the back of Kinglan's head hit the ground. Sharp pain came over her. Kinglan was about to faint from the pain, and her vision went black. Sujihong became furious and raised his left hand to hit Suwon in the face. Suwon sneered and pulled out a dagger from nowhere. Sujihong saw a flash of cold light, sharp pain in his arm, and the dagger irritated his arm. He frowned in pain and his face turned livid. "Naijan, I am your father. Can't I teach you a lesson? I advise you to argue with me here if you have time. Why not go to the doctor quickly? Be careful that you can't save your arm." Suwon wiped the blood on the dagger with a handkerchief, dropped the handkerchief and walked towards Mrs. Su. Sujihong had blue veins popping out on his forehead and his face was distorted. He wanted to ask someone to tie Suwon up, but when he saw the Chijiajin brought by Suwon, he swallowed the bad breath with hatred. A vicious light flashed in his eyes, and he had murderous intentions towards Suwon. Suwon dared to attack Sujihong, but she wasn't afraid of him at all. Even if she can't control herself, she still has her father's support. Thinking of this, Suwon felt even happier. It feels so good to have a dad. "Grandma, I hurt the Marquis, do you have any objection to me?" Suwon got into the carriage and handed the box to Mrs. Su. "This is your dowry. I can't take it, so please keep it."